bugs, this is Why Is My Rice Wet? For the second time, releasing my beautiful voice to be heard across YouTube. I hope you enjoy this video. It's a very delicious video that I'm making. It is countries ranked by their drip in World War II. I'll be ranking them from F, which is the lowest, to S, which is the highest. A disclaimer now, because if I put a disclaimer, I don't think YouTube will delete my video. Because if they delete my video, I'll be extremely miffed. It just took a lot of time to make. So, disclaimer. I do not mean any of the jokes I say here, because they are all jokes. I make fun of French people, of Romanian people, German people, Japanese people. But it's fine, because it's a joke, and I don't mean it. I'm not promoting or telling anyone to commit acts of violence against certain ethnicities. I'm not saying that Romanians are gypsies for any Romanians watching, because you guys definitely aren't gypsies. And I'm basically not being racist, because for one, it's Europeans, and I'm a European, so it's not racism, it's just intercontinental banter. I say in this video, for example, that it's hard to imagine for Romanians to be functional human beings. Now, YouTube might think that that's racist. But remember, Romanians are Europeans. If I said that about a non-European, then you could delete my video, but they're European, so it's fine. Because they won't get offended. So, don't delete my video, because I have nudes of Susan Wojcicki, your boss. So, if my video gets deleted, I'll release them, and her career will be ruined. So, just keep that in mind when you're going to delete my video. Anyways, I hope you enjoy my scrumptious little video I've prepared for you. So now sit down by the fireplace and let Papa Rice read you a bedtime story. If we can come to ignore the mass murder of 6 million Jews, we can maybe appreciate the sheer amounts of drip that the Germans had on them. Their iconic uniforms were manufactured by Hugo Boss when the Austrian painter came to power in 1933. But the Nazis wanted the German uniforms to be recognizable and intimidating, so they found out that if they pulled designs that had worked throughout history, for example, the color black that was used for the SS uniforms, they thought it would inspire fear and a sense of secrecy into their enemies. And believe it or not, the swastika isn't just to adorn English textbooks and bathroom walls, it's actually some sort of lucky charm symbol used in many Asian countries. So you can technically tattoo a swastika on your forehead and say it's for religious reasons. So in my opinion, the Germans have the best uniforms of not only World War II, but the slickest uniforms in all of modern history since the time of Prussia. They had this sort of mindset of, we're going to commit murder on a scale never before seen in human history, but we're going to do it in style. So obviously, I don't think anyone here has a doubt in their mind that the German uniforms deserve S tier. They knew how to make their drip. They knew how to make their Jordans and their hats and their fades. They're pretty good at styling stuff. I mean, I don't know why everyone's just saying Italy has the best fashion. No. When did this become more fashionable than this? Not to mention, the Germans basically carried their entire team in the invasion of Greece, the Desert Campaign, and Operation Barbarossa arcs. And I'm not going to even talk about the tanks and their airplanes, which are, pretty snazzy, to say the least. I do have to say that I don't like their flag. I like the old one better. But, for each his own, I suppose. It's actually hard to imagine the Romanians being functional human beings, let alone waging war against one of the largest armies to ever exist. But lo and behold, we find them fighting alongside the Germans in the Barbarossa arc. Fascist parties such as the Iron Guard began forming in Romania after they lost most of the land they had stolen, won, in World War I to Bulgaria, Russia, and Hungary. Bruh, and Hungary here looks like they're having a bit too much fun in deciding their new borders. Enticed by German promises of new land in Russia, they joined the war in 1940 and joined in on the invasion of the USSR in 1941, sending over 600,000 soldiers to the Soviet Union. And with the help of the Germans, they were able to capture Bessarabia, Odessa, and Sevastopol. As a reward for being a good little PogChamp, Germany bestowed upon them their lost lands of Bessarabia and northern Bukovina, and additionally gave them the province of Transnistria. It was starting to look like Romania and Hungary were in a gay-ass competition to see who could be Germany's favorite bitch, and contribute more soldiers to the war effort. By this time, which is 1944, Romania had contributed over 1 million soldiers to the invasion of Russia. More soldiers than any other Axis nation beside Germany had contributed to this campaign. The Romanian army continued onwards towards Stalingrad, where the Romanians and the Germans got their collective anal cavities ruptured by the Russians. In 1944, when the Germans were getting gang raped by 8 million Soviet soldiers, the Romanians saw the writing on the wall and switched sides. See folks, it's not just Italy that does that. So drip-wise, the Romanians were certainly lacking. I have to say though, it is very impressive how they managed to churn out 1 million soldiers to fight. Pretty impressive. So +1 to them. Oh, and they also made their own uniforms, so another +1. But their helmets are stupid, their Jordans are weak. Nobody likes the gingerbread coloring they have on them. They got no bling, their planes look like dicks. A Romanian kid stole my sticky hand toy at the park one time, when I was little, and they're basically like Latin-speaking Slavs, so -4 points. Their uniforms are kind of plain and unmenacing, and their flag is okay, I guess. I'm gonna have to give Romania a D. Quite bad, not that good. And by the way, Romania did their fair share of holocausting back in the day. I mean, they had a population of 700,000 Jews in Romania. They turned them over to the Germans, or they put them in their own concentration camps. And, of course, in their constant crusade to prove that Romanians definitely aren't gypsies, they killed thousands of gypsies also. So, just a little fun fact. The Empire of Japan, the only other Axis power besides Germany with a functional brain when it comes to strategy. Nowadays, Japan is known for making things like this. But back in the day, the Japanese were known for making the list of indescribable war crimes ever so slightly longer. For obvious reasons, I'm not going to list all of their war crimes because YouTube looks like they have it out for my channel, but some of their more iconic ones rhyme with mass grape and nomicide. The Japanese waged an aggressive war of expansion throughout the 20th century that would have made the Austrian painter proud. In fact, they did become allies in the Second World War. In 1931, Japan seized Manchuria from China. In 1937, the Japanese invade deeper into China. In 1940, the Japanese seized many more cities from the Chinese, and after the fall of France to Germany, they attacked French Indochina.
Then they attacked the American fleet at Pearl Harbor without provocation, without warning. Of course, they were provoked. Of course, they won the Americans. The Americans knew they were coming. Roosevelt just wanted an excuse to go to war with Japan. He knew all along. He knew all along. He knew. Roosevelt knew.
Later, the Japanese invaded Thailand and forced them to be their ally. They invaded Malaysia and Singapore. The Japanese fleet smashed the US at the Philippines. and then promptly proceeded to invade their island. Together with their Thai allies, they invaded the British colony of Burma, kicking the British and Chinese forces out of there. In 1942, they invaded the Dutch colony of Indonesia, destroying the allied Dutch, Australian, and British fleet in the Battle of Java. So basically now the Japanese were just T-posing on their enemies' corpses. They defeated the Australians, the Dutch, the English, the French, the Thai, the Chinese, basically all the competitors. Later they completed their conquest of the Philippines, capturing many Philippine and American troops there. And in 1942, the Japanese achieved their territorial height. But everything changed when the Americans attacked. And by the Americans attacked, I mean the Japanese attacked the American base at Midway, and the Japanese fleet was almost completely destroyed by the Yanks. After this battle, the Japanese would adopt a defensive posture, and the Americans would have to island hop, and the Japanese would just use guerrilla tactics. So after a very bloody war, the Americans dropped the atomic bombs on Japan, and the war was over. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Japanese army. So in their invasion of China, the Japanese demonstrated extreme brutality towards the civilians. The army's Bushido code prevented them from surrendering to the enemy, as it would make them look dishonorable, and if they were going to lose a battle, they would do this suicide charge and yell "a bonsai" as they charge, which means, I think, "long live the emperor." Basically a suicide charge. Sometimes it would actually be effective because it would scare the enemy so much that they would run away. Also, this is really well known, they would do their kamikaze attacks, which is crashing their planes into enemy ships. Now, we're going to start talking about the Japanese drip. In my opinion, the Japanese drip is shite. I mean, look at those hats, for one. Not drippy at all. No. Some of them had helmets, but most of them had hats. They couldn't afford helmets, and they just look bad. They just look pretty bad. The cool thing is that most of them had katanas, which is pretty interesting. But you know, the hats and that khaki coloring isn't doing it for me. They don't look slick at all. So yeah, they were effective on the battlefield, but drip-wise, no, not doing it for me. Their tanks were pretty bad also, but that's not the topic of this video. Their flag is snazzy, it's pretty snazzy, but I do have to say the Japanese could have worked a bit more on their drip. They should get a little drip up. So yeah. This is a photo of the Japanese helmet. It is original. The star doesn't really do it for me because the star is more of a communist symbol, but whatever. It's cool, the shape, but if they could have worn that more often, the drip level would have risen substantially. There's also this one here, which is pretty cool. It's pretty rare though, but it's cool. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So after immense deliberation, the Japanese, well, I'm tempted, drip-wise, I'm tempted to give them a C. But they have a katana, which is cool, and the helmets aren't bad, even though not all of them wore it. So, all that said, Japan deserves a good old B. B+, alright? B+. But it's a B. You can do better, Japan, I know.
Drake, I got the drip.
Silly Charles de Gaulle's you can't have drip.
You would think that France, a country with an impressive military history dating back to the Middle Ages, a country that at one point conquered almost all of Europe, a country with 900,000 regular soldiers and 5 million reservists at the start of 1939, would find no problem in beating German asses. The French had superior supply lines, superior armored vehicles, everything. For example, this tank here, that I'm too lazy to find out what its name was impenetrable from the front, and this one here had the most durable armor at the time. even stronger than the German tanks. The Frenchies had an impressive line of defense straddling the German and Belgian border, so that Germany didn't try to fondle France again like back in World War I. But France at that time did not understand modern warfare. They used messengers on motorcycles and flags to relay messages, whereas the Germans used radios to communicate and made better use of their armored vehicles. So Germany did the old trickaroo on France and Britain, surrounding the Allied army at Dunkirk. French held the lines long enough for the British to escape, but their army wasn't that lucky and got captured by the Germans. At the news of their army's defeat, the French government kind of panicked and surrendered because there was no use in fighting, and also Germany threatened to destroy their pretty little buildings in Paris. And none of us want that, am I right? So the French surrendered, and the Germans set up a puppet government in Vichy that was allied with Germany. However, some French colonies defected to free France and led by Drip Lord Charles de Gaulle. So the Free French fought their own countrymen in the Vichy government. They fought the Germans in North Africa and the Japanese in Indochina, until France was liberated in 1944 and Charles de Gaulle took power. So let's ignore the myriad of factors that contributed to France's defeat, like the massive brain drain that happened after World War I, the political instability, the lack of will to fight, and the French actually have an impressive battle score of 1,115 battles that they've won throughout their history. But instead, let's stick to the good old France surrendered memes. So yeah, France lasted the same amount of time as an elderly man in bed. But, you know, they didn't surrender in Africa. They kept fighting in Africa. And actually, the French government that helped the Germans, that collaborated with the Germans, fought against the Russians in Operation Barbarossa too. But that's not really worthy of praise. So I will just stick to Charles de Gaulle is daddy. Look at Charles de Gaulle. I mean, you know, Drip Lord for one. Look at that stash. So let's not pick on France because they did their part. Poor guys. They keep doing those surrender memes. Good for you, France. I'm gonna say it. Good for you, France. I know. Not many people like France, but I'm gonna stick up for them this time and say, good for you, France. All right, guys. Let's talk about French uniforms. French drip in World War II. As you can see, look at this. As you can see, their uniform is kind of unique. In World War I, their uniform was blue, and now it's not blue. And I do not like that little thing right there. I don't like the color change. Okay, so, you know, we can see their helmet is amazing. Look at that helmet. I'm going to tell you a little secret, and I think I like it a bit more than the German helmet. It's a shame that you won't be seeing a lot of it in this war because the French Continental Army got graped by the Germans, but while it was in use, it was pretty cool, you know? Look at that. It's just that the blue is a problem. And they took away the blue. Also, their coat is cool. They have a nice little coat on. Their Jordans are fine. It's okay, I guess. But what I don't like is the color change. Now, I'm going to tell you something. You have to sacrifice something. You have to sacrifice style or efficiency. Now, the brown is obviously the camouflage, because in World War I, the French were spotted immediately. Because in World War I, their initial uniforms were different. They were like very bright red and blue, and then they changed it because they kept getting killed because the Germans would see them. Here, they've obviously learned their lesson, and they say, okay, we had this kind of bluish color later on in World War I. Let's change it to brown now, so they can't see us at all, because we can camouflage. And yes, they'll camouflage. They'll survive. But in the words of Braveheart, yes, you'll live. But many years from now, you'll be lying in your bed, an old man, and you'll be thinking, if I had this chance, there's one chance to show off the drip to the Germans. Because they can take your lives, but they can never take your drip. Alright? And that's something the French kind of forgot. They need to show the Germans that they have style, they have fashion. France is a capital of fashion. And they've kind of forgotten that in the war. You gotta remember your roots. You gotta remember what you're fighting for. You're fighting for French culture. And you're not really showing that French culture in the drip you have on you. Okay? And that is something that I find insulting. I'm not even French, but I find it insulting. And I think French people should be a little bit ashamed, a little bit abashed that they changed from this snazzy shade of blue it's not that hard to, it's not that noticeable. You have to look kind of hard to find it. To this brown color that looks like the Romanian garb, the cinnamon, and I don't like it one bit. I like their helmets. Their helmets is a plus 5 for me because their helmet's tremendous. But if it would have been a blue helmet and a blue coat on them, tremendous. I'll be like, oh my god, the French, they're so drippy. I'd have put them in S tier, but I can't put them in S tier because they changed their color. Okay, I'm not going to put them in B tier either because just to spite them, I'm going to put them in C tier because they changed their color, they gave up their morals, their ethics, their entire way of life, of fashion. They gave it an entire fashion sense, all of it gone, just to camouflage, just to compromise. They compromised, okay? And that's something I can't respect. I'm sorry, friends, but you get a C. Charles de Gaulle, on the other hand, gets a massive S, because look at that guy. The French also, in the French forces in Africa, they had a colonial army. They had Moroccans, they had Senegalese, they had a bunch of other guys there. The Moroccans look base. Look at the Moroccans. The Moroccans were kind of like the elite units of the French. They were extremely ferocious and very good fighters. They would fight in the North African campaign. They come from the Atlas Mountains, so they're very hardy people. Oh, and then there's the Senegalese, there's guys from Mali, from Mauritania, from all over, There's legionnaires from France, not only from France, but also even from Germany, because the French Foreign Legion was an international legion. Like, it wasn't just for French people, it was for everyone, basically. So you could find some Germans even fighting in the Free French forces for the French Foreign Legion. French officers often wore the iconic kepi hat that's very noticeable, recognizable on the battlefield. You look straight at a guy, you know he's French because he's wearing the kepi. And that's good, that's an A in my book. You need to go for being recognizable, Gotta go for that. Very good, commendable for France. The French Foreign Legion would wear the kepi. That lady in Madagascar wore the kepi. Policemen in France would wear the kepi until the 60s, I think. The French thing is recognizable, and that's something that I commend, It's good. It's very good that they have that little piece of their culture, of their identity, because it just gives a nice little feel to when you're in a battlefield, your friends are dying around you, but it's okay. I'm wearing my traditional French garb, it's fine. As for the helmets, the French Foreign Legion would wear the kepi, iconic kepi. Some would wear sun hats, some would wear helmets donated by the British or donated by the Americans, since they were kind of without a country and they needed to be supplied with extra material, because, we have no country anymore. Some of the colonial soldiers might wear their traditional hats. Some French soldiers might even wear the Adrian helmet, which is the fireman helmet that the French Continental Army would use. They would basically wear whatever they could get their hands on because they were short on supplies, as I've said. So, all in all, if I were to evaluate the French correctly, fairly, justly, I would give them a B because they did sacrifice many lives to liberate their country and they fought very well, but I don't give a shit because they changed the color of their uniforms, so they get a C.